You were unstoppable once. Not because you were exceptional, but because you didn't know enough to doubt yourself yet. When you were younger, before life had tested you, before failure had become familiar, before reality had updated your understanding of how hard things actually are, you just acted. You didn't overthink. You didn't calculate risk. You didn't spend weeks preparing for conversations that might never happen. You saw something you wanted, and you went for it. Not because you had evidence you could do it, but because it didn't occur to you that you couldn't. That's the gift of youthful delusion. Ignorance as rocket fuel. You didn't know what was supposed to be hard, so nothing felt impossible. You didn't know what credentials you were supposed to have, so you didn't wait to be qualified. You didn't know how many people had tried and failed before you, so their failure didn't become your ceiling. You just moved. And sometimes, often actually, that movement carried you further than logic ever could have. You got opportunities you weren't ready for. You succeeded at things you had no business attempting. You built something real before you understood how hard it was supposed to be, and it felt like proof. Proof that you were different, that you had something others didn't. That confidence was just who you were. But here's what you didn't realize. It wasn't confidence. It was delusion. And delusion, when it's intact, is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. This is why the gurus tell you to just believe in yourself. Why motivational content preaches mindset over strategy. Why fake it till you make it became a cultural mantra. Because delusional confidence works. Not forever, but long enough to look like magic. When you don't know what you don't know. When you haven't been humbled yet. When failure is still theoretical. When your self-concept hasn't been tested against reality. You operate with a certainty that's magnetic. You take risks that careful people avoid. You attempt things that experience says you shouldn't. You move without the weight of self-doubt, slowing every decision. And that creates outcomes. Real outcomes. Not because you were talented, but because you were fearless. And fearlessness, even when it's based on ignorance, gets you into rooms that hesitation never will. So the advice isn't wrong. Believe in yourself does work, when your mind hasn't collected contradicting evidence yet. Act as if you've already made it does create momentum, when you don't know enough to spot the performance. The positive affirmations, the visualization, the unshakable conviction that you're destined for greatness, all of it works when you're untested, when delusion is still intact, when your mind can still be tricked into certainty. That's the power of delusional confidence. It's not weak. It's not fake. When it's real to you, it's one of the strongest psychological states you can inhabit. The problem isn't that it doesn't work. The problem is what happens when it breaks. Because eventually, it does break. You take a risk, and it doesn't land. You bet on yourself, and you lose. You walk into a room with that same unshakable certainty. And this time, reality pushes back. At first, you dismiss it. One failure doesn't mean anything. Setbacks happen. You tell yourself it's temporary. But then it happens again. And again. And slowly, the pattern you thought was momentum reveals itself as something else. Luck. Timing. Circumstances that had nothing to do with how special you were. And the wins you thought proved your exceptionalism? They start to look different in hindsight. Was I actually good at that? Or was I just early? Did I earn that opportunity? Or was I in the right place at the right time? Was any of it real? Or was I just confident enough that people believed me? The questions start quietly, but they compound. And the more you lose, the louder they get. Until one day, You're standing in a room that used to feel easy, and you don't recognize yourself anymore. The certainty is gone. The fearlessness has been replaced by hesitation. The belief that you were different has been shattered by the reality that you're not. And the delusion that carried you this far? It doesn't survive contact with repeated failure. It collapses, not all at once, but gradually, and then suddenly, until you're left standing at rock bottom with zero confidence and no idea how to rebuild. Because the foundation you thought you were standing on was never solid. It was just a story you told yourself. And now that story doesn't work anymore. And here's the part no one tells you. Once delusion breaks, you can't rebuild it. You'll try. You'll go back to the affirmations. You'll tell yourself you're confident, capable, unstoppable. You'll fake the certainty you used to feel. You'll repeat the mantras that worked before. I am successful. I am powerful. I am destined for greatness. But your mind isn't listening anymore because it's updated. It's seen the evidence now. It knows you're not invincible. It knows you can fail repeatedly. It knows the world doesn't care how much you believe in yourself. And you can't unsee that. You can't gaslight your own brain back into ignorance. The gurus will still preach delusion. Just choose confidence. Believe harder. Your mindset is everything. And you want so badly for that to work again. You want to flip the switch and feel unstoppable like you used to. But you can't. Because your subconscious has collected data that contradicts the story. It's watched you fail. It's cataloged the gap between what you believed and what actually happened. It's built a model of reality that includes your limitations. And affirmations don't overwrite evidence. Positive thinking doesn't erase failure. Faking confidence doesn't create real capability. So you're stuck. The easy path, the one everyone says works, the one that carried you before, is closed now. You've lost access to delusion, and that feels like a curse. But it's not. It's the turning point. Because now, for the first time, you have to build something real. You're standing at a crossroads. Behind you, the delusion that used to work. Ahead, two paths. Path 1. Try to rebuild the delusion. Keep faking it. Keep telling yourself you're great even when your mind doesn't believe it. Keep surrounding yourself with people who validate the story. Keep avoiding situations that might expose the fragility. This path is exhausting. It's a full-time job, protecting an image that even you don't believe anymore. You'll achieve some things, maybe even impressive things, but you'll always feel like an imposter. Always worried the facade will crack. Always one failure away from total collapse. Because you're building on the same foundation that already broke once, and it will break again. Path 2. Accept that delusion is gone. Build something real instead. Start from zero, not with affirmations, with evidence. Prove things to yourself through action, not belief. Make promises and keep them, even when they're small, even when no one's watching. Fail, recover, and prove you can survive it. This path is harder, slower, completely unglamorous. No one's going to celebrate you for making your bed at rock bottom. But this path builds something the first one never could. Confidence that doesn't collapse. Confidence that survives failure because it was built through failure. Confidence based on proof, not hope. Most people choose path 1 because it feels easier, because it's what the culture preaches, because admitting you need to start from zero feels like admitting you failed. But path 1 leads to chronic anxiety, imposter syndrome, and a life spent pretending. Path 2? That's the path of people with unshakable confidence. Not because they never doubt, but because they've proven, through 1,000 small actions, that doubt doesn't stop them. You can't go back to delusion. Your mind knows too much now. So the only question is, are you going to spend the rest of your life trying to fake what you used to have? Or are you going to build something that can't be taken away? If you choose the real path, here's where it starts. Rock bottom. Zero confidence. Zero momentum. Just you and the uncomfortable truth that you're starting over. And here's what makes this so hard. You have to start smaller than your ego wants to accept. Make your bed. That feels like a joke when you used to achieve real things. Clean your room? That feels humiliating when you used to have actual ambitions. But here's what you're missing. You're not starting small because you've shrunk. You're starting small because you're finally building on solid ground. Delusional confidence let you skip steps. It let you win without foundation. And when that delusion collapsed, you fell all the way to the bottom because there was nothing underneath. Now you're building differently, from the ground up. And ground level work doesn't look impressive. It looks like making your bed when no one's watching. It looks like keeping a promise to yourself that no one else will ever know about. But those small, invisible acts, they're the only thing that creates real confidence. Because they're not based on hoping you're special. They're based on proving you're reliable. Day 1, you make your bed. It's small. It feels pointless, but you did it. Day 7, you've made it 7 days straight. Your mind notices. Oh, we said we'd do this, and we did. Day 30, you've kept the promise 30 times. It's not hope anymore. It's a pattern, and patterns build identity. You're not someone who thinks they're disciplined. You're someone who has 30 days of evidence that they follow through. That's the difference. Delusional confidence says, I'm disciplined, with no proof. Real confidence says, I've proven I'm disciplined 30 times. And your subconscious trusts proof over belief. But here's where most people misunderstand the process. They think the confidence comes from the perfect streak, from never breaking the pattern. That's not where confidence is built. Confidence is built in the recovery. Day 31. You sleep through your alarm. You leave the bed unmade. You feel like you failed. And this is where most people quit, because they think the streak was the point, but the streak was never the point. Day 32. You make your bed again. Not because the streak is intact, but because you decided that one failure doesn't define the pattern. This moment, the moment you restart after breaking, this is where confidence is actually built. Not in the perfection, but in the resilience. Not in never falling, but in getting back up. Because here's what that restart proves. Failure doesn't stop you. You can break the promise to yourself and still come back. You're not fragile. You're resilient. And resilience is what creates unshakable confidence. Over the next year, you'll break that streak 12 times, and you'll restart 12 times. And each restart adds evidence to the bank. Not evidence that you're perfect, but evidence that you're durable. That failure is just data, not identity. And eventually, after enough recoveries, after enough restarts, after enough proof that you can fall and get back up, your mind stops fearing failure. Not because you believe you'll never fail, but because you've proven you can survive it. That's the shift. From, I hope I don't fail, to, I know I can handle it if I do. And that shift, that's where confidence becomes unshakable. And then something changes. You start winning again. Not the same way you won before. This time, you know exactly why. Because you have the evidence. You know you're winning because you woke up at 5 a.m. for 6 months straight. Even when you didn't want to. You made your bed every day, even when it felt pointless. You kept your word to yourself. even when no one else was watching. You broke the streak a dozen times and restarted a dozen times. You proved you were consistent. You proved you were resilient. You earned this. This win isn't luck. It's not timing. It's the compound interest of 1,000 small decisions you made when no one was paying attention. And that changes everything. Because when you know, with absolute certainty, that your success is the direct result of your effort, when you have months of evidence showing the clear cause-effect relationship, when you can trace the win back to the exact habits you built from rock bottom, that's when confidence becomes unshakable. The first time you won, you thought it proved you were special. You weren't sure what you did right, and when you lost, you had no idea what went wrong. No map back. Just confusion and the sinking feeling that maybe you were never that good to begin with. But this time you know. You know the win came from the 6 a.m. wake-ups, from the promises you kept to yourself. You have the receipts. And when you have receipts, when you can point to the exact habits that created the outcome, losing stops being scary, because you're not wondering if it was luck. You know you built this, and if it falls apart, you know exactly how to build it again. That's the difference between fragile and unshakable. Fragile confidence says, "I hope this keeps working." Unshakable confidence says, "I know exactly why this works." And knowing why, having the evidence, understanding the causation, possessing the receipts, that can't be taken away. So here's what unshakable confidence actually is. It's not believing you'll never fail. It's knowing you can survive failure and continue anyway. It's not thinking you're better than everyone else. It's not needing to compare yourself to anyone else. It's not the belief that you're destined for greatness. It's the evidence that you're capable of rebuilding from nothing. Unshakable confidence doesn't come from a perfect track record. It comes from an imperfect one. From the days you made your bed and the days you didn't. From the streaks you built and the streaks you broke. From the goals you hit and the goals you missed. From the times you got knocked down and the times you got back up. That's the evidence that matters. Not that you're flawless, but that you're resilient. Not that you never fail, but that failure doesn't stop you. And once you've proven that to yourself enough times, once you've restarted after breaking the streak, recovered after the setback, continued after the failure, that's when confidence becomes unshakable. Not because you believe you'll never fall, but because you know you'll always get back up. You can't trick your mind into this. You can't affirm your way here. You can't fake it till you make it, because your subconscious doesn't trust words. It trusts evidence. And evidence only comes from action, from doing the thing you said you'd do, especially when you don't feel like it, from falling short and restarting anyway, from proving, through repetition, that you're someone who keeps their word, to yourself, even when no one else is watching, even when it doesn't feel significant, even when the win is so small, it's invisible to everyone but you. Those invisible wins compound. Day 1, you keep one small promise. You proved something tiny. Day 30, you've kept that promise 30 times. Now it's a pattern. Day 365, you've kept that promise 365 times. Now it's who you are. And when you become someone who keeps promises to yourself, when that identity is built on evidence, not hope, that's when confidence becomes unshakable. Because it's not based on outcomes you can't control. It's based on actions you can. It's not dependent on external validation. It's built on internal proof. And internal proof, the kind you create through 1,000 small kept promises, that doesn't collapse when life gets hard. It's what gets you through. Delusional confidence got you started. It gave you the fearlessness to try things you had no business attempting. And for that, it was valuable. But it was always going to break. Because it was built on ignorance, not evidence. Rock bottom destroyed the delusion. And that felt like the end. But it was actually the beginning. Because now you couldn't trick your mind anymore. You had to build something real. Something that could survive failure. Something based on proof. And that proof, accumulated through months of small actions, repeated failures and recoveries, kept promises that no one else witnessed. That's what creates unshakable confidence. Not the belief that you're exceptional, but the evidence that you're reliable. Not the hope that you'll succeed, but the knowledge that you can handle whatever happens. Not the fantasy that you'll never fail, but the proven track record that failure doesn't define you. That's the difference. Delusional confidence collapses the first time. Reality doesn't match the fantasy. Unshakable confidence gets stronger every time you survive something you thought you couldn't. One is built on what you hope is true. The other's built on what you've already proven. And what you've proven can't be taken away. Not by failure. Not by criticism. Not by setbacks or losses or moments where you fall short. Because you've already failed before. And you're still here. And every time you get back up, you add more evidence. More proof that you're not fragile. That you're durable. That you can be knocked down and still continue. That's unshakable. Not because nothing can shake you, but because when something does, you know exactly what to do. You've done it before. You have the receipts, and receipts don't lie. If this made sense to you, you already know why you're here. We'll talk again.